Okay, well, let's get started then. Well, welcome to our session on managing global teams during a pandemic. I am Amy Patton, and I will be your moderator. I am the VP of Technology at SPS Commerce, and I lead a global tech team that provides critical services for SPS staff and our customers. As you're aware, companies had to make dramatic shifts in March to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. Millions of people lost their jobs in the US or furloughed, and millions more had to virtually overnight start working. Now, 6 months later, many of these companies still have a substantial part of our workforce impacted by these changes. Welcome to my home office, by the way. And I do share this home office with my kids who are again taking online classes, which I'm sure many of you can commiserate with the challenges of that as well. So, technology teams had to pivot quickly to handle the new paradigm. Whether it's ensuring that the applications that we need to do our business are available for our employees, including video conferencing and collaboration tools, or to building new products and services to adapt to this new way of doing business. We have a fantastic group of Twin Cities technology leaders on this panel today, representing businesses from different sizes and sectors. And I think that you'll find what they have to share today will be important for tech leaders from both startups to mature organizations. I'd like to remind attendees that you can put any questions that you have into the chat, and we'll get to those questions later in the session. So with that, I'd like to have each of the panelists introduce themselves, and we'll start with Jadee.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jadee Hanson. I am the current CIO and CISO at Code42. We're a software development company based in the Minneapolis area. We have about 500 people as part, and we develop a software solution that helps security teams, just like the security team that I lead at the company. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you. Shivani, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thanks, Amy. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shivani Stumpf. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Hunuit. We're a K-12 education technology company. We provide analytics to school districts, state departments of education, and county offices of education here in the United States. We're a small company. We're about 100 people. I have 65 people on my team, and I'm responsible for our product strategy, technology teams, infrastructure, as well as our implementation teams. Excited to be here today. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. Jamie.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jamie Thingelstad. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for SPS Commerce. I work every day with Amy and have the pleasure of having built a technology team with her and the rest of the team leadership over the last several years. SPS Commerce runs the world's retail network, so we connect about 90,000 companies in retail together to make it easier for them to do business together. We have a technology team around 400 people that actually is on 4 different continents. So we have team members in North America, in Eastern Europe, in Australia, and also partner team members in India. And so we have a very global team, and very excited to be here and talk to you about what we've been doing lately.
Great, thanks. And we do have one more panelist who hasn't been able to join just yet, but hopefully he'll be able to come, and that's Teddy Bekele, and he is from Land O'Lakes. So let's get started. In March, when most of us went remote, like I was saying earlier, how did the transition go? What tools and processes did you have in place that made that transition smoother? Jadee, we'll start with you.
Sure. So March was a really interesting month for us. We had actually planned a offsite with my executive team, and then we had our core leadership team all planning to go and do an offsite at Disney World. And while we all really wanted to go, we decided leading up to the trip that our core leadership team would stay back, and the executive team still went, and we spent the time that we had really set aside to plan for an outstanding 2020 to really step back and think about what does it mean now that we're in a pandemic. And so day 2 of the executive team planning session, we decided we were going to close down the entire office while we were in Florida. So I enabled my team. We talked a lot about what it would mean to send everybody home. And the one thing that we kind of lucked out on is we did some testing because we had the Super Bowl in town, not too far behind that, where everybody was working at home. And so with that testing, we thought we were set up to enable everybody to work from home. We made the call on a Thursday night. That Friday, everybody packed up their stuff, they went home, and that's where we've kind of been ever since. And so for us, we were software development company. We choose a lot of the leading SaaS solutions. And so a lot of our products and services that we use to enable the business are just that. They're cloud-based SaaS products, which certainly positioned us well to not skip a beat and keep on working and getting access to the things that we need. We did have a bit of challenge as it relates to development of our product and VPN access. And so we had to make a few small changes there, but for the most part, we felt like we were very well set up to continue being effective and productive in a home environment right away.
Great. And I know, Jamie, you can relate to the Super Bowl comments that Jadee was mentioning earlier, but do you want to tell us, what was the transition like for SPS?
Well, so it was actually, I was actually on a business trip right as as things were getting very serious in the U.S. And I remember our CEO, Archie Black, called me up and he said, okay, fine. Is this really going to work? Like for real? Like we can have everybody remote and it'll all work. And I said, yes, absolutely. We've tested it. We know that this will work. And we really were able to make that transition without really skipping a beat. We did, I think we had some good luck on our side too. We had actually just made the transition to using Zoom, which was about to experience a probably 8x fold in usage. And honestly, if we had a challenging, I'm not going to name providers, but we had a challenging solution before that. And I think it would have been very troublesome if we would have not made that transition. We also have a very engaged team in Slack, and so having Slack around meant that people could connect and continue to do their work. So we're able to make that transition, and I will call out, I think technology teams are generally they're pretty they can fix a lot of the kind of challenges with the equipment themselves, but they're pretty adept at using it. But I was honestly super impressed with how all parts of the company immediately made that transition, and including roles that just have not historically done that type of work model. So it worked out very well, and we definitely didn't see any negative impact operationally from the transition.
Great, thanks. And Teddy, I'm glad you could make it. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully you're able to hear me. Okay, good. I had a little bit of challenge here, but so Teddy Bekele, I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Land O'Lakes. We're a farmer-owned cooperative located in Arden Hills, Minnesota, which is just north of the Twin Cities. We have a technology group that's about 250 people internal and about another 300 or so external, and employee base of 10,000, of which probably close to 2,000 are in here in Arden Hills in Minnesota.
Great. Well, Teddy, I'll have you kick off the next question then. So how have you connected with your teams during the pandemic, and what has worked best?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, I was coming into this session and the switch that didn't go as smoothly as I'd hoped it would be was I hold a CTO update every 2 weeks now. And we started that back in right around May, I think, like about a month we're into the pandemic, start to realize, the quarterly town halls, and we're not really cutting it, right? Because we had one meeting, and then the next one was going to be in the August timeframe, and that was too far away for people to connect. So one of the first things we did was, and obviously kind of doing more updates, and I started doing them monthly, and then the team was like, no, we need more than that. And so we went on an every 2-week basis. So every 2 weeks, we have teams have the ability to submit questions ahead of time so we can answer them. We do a thorough review of the financials, which sometimes they send me through the ringer on that one and really test my ability to look at a profit and loss statement. But also have the ability to address things like return to work, right? When are we going to go back? What are the policies? What can we do from home? You know, what is changing and whatnot? And those things are important, but then it's also given us the opportunity to bring, you know, as we started at the beginning, there was lots of topics to talk about, but, you know, all of a sudden you're starting to like, what do we talk about next? And we start bringing our business leaders into the conversation. And some of them had never heard from them before, and some of the depth and insight that they have. So we've done a lot of that. So, and I think that's emulated also what the teams are doing, right? So they're connecting with each other on a more frequent basis now. You know, and the idea that also have more people in the meeting, because one-on-ones, I mean, we're taking up the schedule, right? Because you needed to connect with your direct team. You know, what you'd have done in 5 minutes in the hallway now is a 30-minute, you know, team, Zoom, WebEx call. And so like, okay, what's a different way? So having more people in a conversation helps. The last thing I'll say that's also been interesting, and I was hoping to have a little thing here, is with those with kids, one of the fun things that happened for me once my son is 7 years old is I would be in a meeting like this, and all of a sudden a little Lego would just like show up over the screen, you know, while I'm talking, and I'm like, my hand's like pushing it to the side, trying not to get him to be in the way. But people found that to be interesting, and a couple of people came back and said, hey, my kids are like doing Legos at the wazoo too, and so why can we do like a Lego session with the kids? And so we actually have a Lego Masters session that we did once a week till school just started, where we had a theme and the kids would bring their thing, and you sit with your parents, and they would show like what they did, you know, and all the different creations that they came up with over week to week. That's been kind of a fun way, number one, to just kind of get some relief from kind of the normal sort of work type speak. But then also like kids really love the fact that you're sitting in front of the computer all day looking at the screen, and now I have the ability to be there with you, right? And there's some kind of allure to that. So that was pretty cool to do those kind of things.
Oh, that's great. I mean, kids are really getting a bring your kid to work kind of experience in ways that they never would have before. But I love how you're talking about the connections that you're getting with teams, and that people are seeing and hearing from folks that they might not have before, and that's pretty powerful. Jadee, how about for your teams?
Yeah, very similar to Teddy in the terms of just the frequency. We increase the frequency of the amount that we're meeting with teams, we're meeting one-on-one, we're having large team meetings. And so certainly trying to do that. The other thing that we've tried to focus on too was just try to get something on the calendar that is not work and is fun, where we can kind of be together and we can talk and share, and it doesn't have to be about work. And so one of the things we started was we call ourselves Team Awesome, and we started a Team Awesome fun hour each month. And during the hour, there's no work talk, and the theme is something fun. And so just last week, a person on my team who knows very little about wine took us through a wine tasting and shared facts about wines that he doesn't really even understand the details of them, but it was hilarious, and we all laughed and we all had a blast. And I think some of that is really needed with our teams right now. Just something on calendar that we can all kind of look forward to, that doesn't tie to work. And so that's one kind of unique thing we're doing with our teams right now that they've really enjoyed.
Yeah, I think we're really getting an opportunity to get to know people on a more personal basis, which is really good for connecting and having that connection when you're working. Okay, so next question. What has been the hardest part about managing a tech team in 2020? And what have been some positive and unexpected outcomes? Shivani, would you like to answer that?
Sure. You know, it's so we're an inherently remote company. We do have, or we did, I guess we still have office locations in 7 states across the U.S., and 3 of them were primarily due to acquisitions that we made last year. But the company as a whole, you know, we've been pretty remote. Everybody else has been pretty remote, and so. One of the hardest things about the pandemic, of course, were people who were coming into the office every day, them not having the camaraderie that they typically did. And then even for some of us that I would always, every month I would travel to one of our locations to meet with the teams, and, you know, we would go out and do something fun and just, you know, have the connection. And that was really hard for, I think, for the teams themselves, folks who would come into the office every day and not have the ability to do that anymore. And of course, you know, for the rest of us too. However, I would say the silver lining with that has been, as I mentioned before, you know, we have been a pretty hybrid organization since the beginning. We have lots of people that work remotely as well as people who are in the office. And one of the things that one of my leaders on the team said to us, you know, as we were debriefing on, you know, what are some of the things that we could do in order to increase the interaction between teams and just get a pulse on how everybody is doing. One of the things he mentioned to me was the fact that now that everybody is remote, it's kind of leveled the playing field, you know, for people that were remote before and, you know, the people that had, you know, somewhat of an advantage because they were all in the office together. Even though I would say, you know, Hunuit has done a fantastic job. You know, we've been a Zoom company since the beginning. Everybody does a great job right out of the gate. You know, getting on Zoom, getting on video, not just audio, but on video too. Even prior to the pandemic, and of course, you know, all of that just rolled in once the pandemic started. And as I mentioned, I think people who were remote early on, I think just appreciated the fact that now everybody is remote, so it kind of leveled the playing field for everybody. And I know, Jamie, you made a point earlier about, you know, some of the tech teams also tend to be introverted. So it's not just leveling the playing field for those who are remote and on-site, but also those who are introverted. So I think that's been one of the silver linings. I would say another piece of feedback that several folks on my team have shared with me around the positives have been truly integrating work and life in a good way. And this person's example was, you know, he has little kids, toddlers. You know, he would leave for work in the morning, come back in the evening, almost bedtime, you know, by the time he would get home. So maybe get a chance to spend, you know, dinner and a couple hours with them. But now, because of the flexibility with being remote, he's able to have breakfast with them every day, able to have lunch with them every day. So it just increases, you know, the time that you can spend with family and you know, with a more flexible schedule. And so I think some of those things have been definitely positive, you know, for a few people on the team.
Great. Jamie, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would strongly echo, Shivani, what you're saying about the kind of leveling of the playing field. I mean, it's amazing. You know, we're on a call and there's people from, you know, an hour time zone away and 8-hour time zones away and 12-hour time zones away. But, you know, to me, they all seem like they're right next door. And so we definitely have been thinking about how do we continue to embrace that, because that access to information has been just tremendously powerful and beneficial for our global teams. The global teams, I think it's interesting. It's been this huge. We have this situation with we have 1,400 employees and about 900 of them are in downtown Minneapolis. And there was this huge shift for the 900 in downtown Minneapolis where they felt like maybe they weren't getting as much connection as they were before. But the 500 remote are feeling more connected than they ever have in their entire time that they've been with the company. So I think that's been really, really good, and something I want to figure out how we continue to pull that forward. The other thing is it's completely forced us to rethink certain activities that we've done. You know, one of the things that we do is every year we have an event called Tech Jam. And it's an opportunity for our technology team to connect as technologists. So it's kind of a bar camp where anybody in the team can give a presentation. They can volunteer to talk about a tech framework, a language. They might talk about, we had somebody give a session on Tai Chi. Somebody gave a session on productivity methods, just a wide range of topics. And that's been an event that honestly has always been really Minneapolis centric. And this year we had to embrace doing it in a distributed fashion. And what was interesting is we came up with an entire new way to do it, where we actually followed the sun. The event actually started at a certain time and then went 24 hours a day for 2 days. There were sessions going on at 3 in the morning Minneapolis time when teams in other locations and countries were presenting. And the amazing part is, even for those in who previously attended in person, it was the highest rated edition of that ever. And so, you know, we looked at it as like, well, actually we made it better by doing this change. We had a similar thing with when we do our planning for every quarter planning. You know, we had actually put in that we were going to have a budget challenge because we had to fly all these people in from around the world to do this quarterly planning process. And we didn't have that option. And we've now figured out how to do that in a way that is more convenient for people, gets the same outcome, and less expensive. I think the thing that we've struggled with, or I've struggled with the most, though, is how to celebrate. I think I'm still working on, you know, we have a lot of ways as teams that we get together and we celebrate our accomplishments. And that I find to be much more challenging in this environment. So I think we're still figuring that out. I'm sure it can be done. But I think that's something that we're still putting together.
That's great. Maybe we'll have to have someone from Team Awesome at Code 42 do the wine experience.
We love it. Great way to celebrate it.
Okay, so Teddy, I'm going to give you this next question. So many tech companies, including Facebook, Twitter, Shopify, Slack, have publicly stated that much of their workforce will remain remote indefinitely. What strategy do you see your company embracing?
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, even the transition to just working from home was a challenging one for us, right? And the reason I say that, not from a technical standpoint, like all those pieces, I know we talked about it earlier, we enabled it, but just culturally, I mean, we're 99-year-old co-op, right? Going into 100 years next year. And so the culture of you come to the office, you come there at 7, you meet face to face. I mean, a lot of our business, especially on the ag side, is huge relationship based, right? So the idea that you show up in person and I need to see you in order to trust you and do business with you. So that's kind of ingrained in our culture. So all of a sudden here we go, like, okay, everybody, at least everybody that's not in the plants or in the warehouses, like you have to work from home. So I think that was a shift for people. But you know, obviously the younger employee base has always been wanting to, like, why can't we have this? Like, and we used to have, you know, like you have your Fridays off, and if you want to, like early summer hours or whatever we wanted to call that. And if you need to take a day off here and there because, you know, you had some things to take care of at home, we're very flexible when it came to all those types of things. But the idea that you actually did a full day of work from home was not accepted, right? And now we shifted to this. So there was a little bit of an issue, like when that happened culturally, kind of the cracks started to show up a little bit there. But I think now we're starting to get adjusted. And the last survey we just did here in the last couple of weeks still showed that, you know, of those working from home, about 60 to 70% like would like to continue working from home. Now, part of it is due to, you know, like still have not comfortable coming to work yet, you know, or my kids are in sort of a hybrid mode at the moment, so I need to be home. So a lot of that is driven, but there's a good proportion that says, you know what, I don't really mind this anymore. And I think what it's going to do for us is it's really going to change the dynamics of what the office looks like. I still think, you know, once the pandemic and all that sort of goes away and we have a vaccine for it, we will return back to the office, but we will not return into the same mode that we were in before. I think the idea of working from home is going to be a lot more accepted. The idea that we may have teammates that are going to be across the country and not necessarily just located in Minneapolis, that's going to come into the picture. And, you know, one interesting things, and earlier I was a little bit late, is we had already made the open workspace transition, right? That's one thing that happened about a year and a half ago. where we said we're no longer going to have desks and cubicles, where we're going to have this open workspace. And that in itself was a big shift. But that in place now, with the fact that you don't have a specific desk to go back to, but you're kind of using general space, I think working from home is really going to be one of those things that gets inserted. And we probably go to some mode that's more hybrid, right? Like where you can work from days when you're more comfortable. If you need to focus and have all the equipment that you need in the office, you come into the office and do that. If you have team meetings, come meet with your team. But if, virtually is a better way to do it, that's also going to be accepted. So I think we're going to have a shift in just the culture set of our work. And the relationship piece is still going to be very much valued, the face-to-face when you need it. But when you can do work, and especially on the days that I am sure the days in which Minneapolis gets 20 below zero, people will be totally comfortable working from home, right? And so I think we'll be able to see that shift. That said, a good portion of our business still plants, warehouses, distribution centers. Those. I mean, I applaud the folks that work there because we haven't skipped a beat. We've had instances where we've had folks being tested positive for COVID and had to shut down some locations and do some sanitation and all those types of things. But that kept going, right? I mean, butter was on the shelves. All the other products from Land O'Lakes were there. Farmers were getting their seed. Applications were being done on field. So there's folks that put in the hours and actually probably worked more hours than past years to continue that, keep going. So, and all of us know that, right? So the rest of the organization also understands there are folks that are working like this. So productivity has not lowered even because you have that in mind.
That's great. I know I absolutely appreciated that the Land O'Lakes butter was still on the
absolutely.
shelf, so
people have discovered the fun of cooking and baking again, which we love that.
Yeah. So some pretty transformational changes for a company of your size. Shivani, tell us, a little bit about what that's been like.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we were a pretty hybrid company to begin with, and so one of the things that we've decided on, as far as opening the offices is concerned, is we're fortunate enough, unlike what Teddy was just describing, we're fortunate that we really don't need to all be in the office, to do our jobs. We can get everything done remotely. And so we definitely want to put, the safety and the health of our employees first. And we're going to be really cautious to go back. And I completely agree with all the other points that Teddy made. That's exactly how we're thinking about it too. I think we've seen both sides of it. People who were going into the offices every day, we've received feedback from them that they absolutely have appreciated the flexibility that they get now by being remote. If you have to go run quick to run a chore or go to the dentist or do whatever, we provided all of that flexibility even before, but it just makes things so much more convenient if you absolutely don't need to go into the office every day. But on the flip side too, it doesn't take away the fact that, you do want to at least be there for planning meetings. And, when there is a big celebration or, just for meetings in general, it's, sometimes it's just so much more efficient to do it in person versus remote. So again, I echo all of Teddy's comments. I think we're not rushing to go back. We're probably going to be the laggards, I think, and once all the other businesses that absolutely need to go back, once we see how all of that's going to hopefully when all of that is, when the pandemic is, I don't know if it's ever going to be behind us. I hope so at some point with the vaccines and things, but we're definitely, I think, going to wait and watch. And once we feel comfortable that people can actually start going in without having, without us feeling, scared for employees, I think at that point we'll probably start letting everyone go back to the office. And we've even right now, once in a while, we get requests from teams that say, can we get together? Like, can we go out to lunch, or can we, we rent space at WeWorks here in Minneapolis, in Irvine, California, in Texas, Plano. So our teams ask us, can we go there? And we, right now we're just telling them that, if you want to, it's at your own discretion, but we're not officially making a policy for people to go back into the office. And I think that's probably going to remain.
Great, thank you. Okay, Jamie, I'm going to give the next question to you first. So innovation is at the heart of technology. How have you been inspiring innovation from your teams?
Well, I think the first thing to do is make sure that you make it a priority. And so one of the things that we have done is as we've scaled up our agile processes, we've adopted many of the best practices around essential safe. And one of the things that it talks about is doing a planning and innovation sprint. So we actually carve out every 8th sprint, we carve out as a dedicated planning and innovation sprint. And it is dual purpose. It does help us plan for the future work. And then we also carve out the time for teams to spend doing innovative new development. And it's been pretty impressive, honestly. We've seen a significant amount of new capability come into the products from things that happen during those innovation cycles. The other thing that we've done is, I mentioned the event that we do, Tech Jam. We actually wrap that whole event inside of a hackathon as well. And so it kicks off with the start of the hackathon. Teams form small teams, they develop new solutions, and then they demo those at the end. I'm hopeful next year I want to actually bring in some non-tech team members into that process so that they can be part of that hackathon as well. But I think that's what I definitely have taken away is that you can't just allow it to happen serendipitously. You need to make sure that you're making it a priority, that teams know it's a priority, and then make sure that the outcomes of that are going back into your planning process and your roadmaps for the future.
Great. Jadee, how about it?
Yeah, we're very similar to SPS in that regard, and I completely agree with Jamie. The innovation initiatives have to be really intentional. I think about like my own schedule. I'm in meetings typically 8 to 5, and if I have a half-hour break, it's not like I can be innovative on the spot in that half hour. And so at Code 42, we are really intentional about innovation. It drives us, drives product features, functionality. It drives a lot of what we do as a business. A couple practices that we've implemented at the company. One is really simple, but we've started focus time. And so a lot of the tech teams have a block on their calendar where they really have that focused thinking time set aside. And then just recently, we actually expanded that to have a full day dedicated to 0 meetings and thinking time. And letting people just like spend the day like innovating on what needs to be done or being strategic about what needs to be done in their organizations. And that has been fantastic for us. A couple of the other practices that we do have a hackathon, like Jamie mentioned, where we get a lot of different teams across the organization together, and we come up with very, very interesting creative ideas, and we let the teams essentially create whatever it is they come up with. Everything's time boxed, and we have big presentations at the end to see what they can develop in the amount of time that we give them. And that has actually been really cool to see. We've seen a number of the things as part of the hackathon actually appear in our product, which is awesome. The other kind of neat thing that we do is we do an initiative called, we call it Spark 42. And really it's about a big idea. So anybody across the company can have a big idea. They submit the big idea. We have a team that goes through them, selects kind of the key ones that they want to move forward. There's big fancy posters that are created. The organization kind of gets to vote, and then people get funding and resources to move those ideas forward. And so that's another kind of practice that we have, that really the core focus is all around innovation.
That's great. Shivani?
Gosh, Jamie and Jadee covered so much of, I think, what we do as well. And I do have to, perfect segue, Jadee, to your comments about hackathon items appearing on product roadmaps and in the product. we had our first ever hackathon at Hunuit in January of this year. And Jamie was actually one of our judges. So thank you, Jamie, for doing that for us. It was super fun. The teams had such a great time. We did have both the technology teams as well as the business teams attend and participate. And I want to say we had about, I think we had about 13 different teams and 13 different initiatives or ideas that came out of the hackathon. And I want to say about 7 or 8 of them have either made it into the roadmap or are already in the product. And so we took it from the hackathon, we further refined it over the last few months, and now it's part of what we actually offer our customers. So that's been really awesome for us. And actually, a few of us were just talking about this last week, and we were tossing around with the idea of can we do a hackathon remote? Because we actually had all of our teams from all of the different locations come to Minneapolis in January. And yes, the folks from California really enjoyed playing with the snow then. So even though it was sub-zero temperatures, I think. But I'm really happy to hear that, Jamie, that your teams have been successful in doing the hackathons remote. And so that gives me confidence that, we can probably try to plan and strive for round 2 over here, to make that happen. Another thing I want to say as far as innovation is concerned, especially, given the 100% remote setting that we have, one of the things that we've done at Hunuit is every time we have a difficult problem or a challenging problem at hand, what we've encouraged teams to do that has worked really well is, because it's hard, right? We all can't get into a room and brainstorm or whiteboard or strategize, on how to solve that problem. So what we've done is have one person just host a Zoom session and everybody joins, and we just keep that Zoom session open all day. And so you're not just developing in isolation, 3 or 4 people developing in isolation and then coming back and having a 1-hour meeting to discuss what we've done. They're actually all there. People can be working on their own pieces, but then you have everybody available on Zoom in case you have a quick question or an idea or a suggestion or a finding that you want to share with everybody else. And that's, even though of course it doesn't, I'm not going to say it replaces getting together, in person in a room, but it's been very effective, or as effective as I think we can make it. So that's an idea that's worked really well for us.
It's fantastic. Okay, I want to leave a little time to answer some of the questions that are in chat, but I have one more for each of you. And Teddy, I'll start with you. What is one piece of advice that you have for startups that are just building their tech teams?
I mean, the biggest thing as I think about that question is the element of trust, right? You have to spend some time creating trust amongst the team. And I tell you that just from my organization. I've been in this role for about 2 years. And when I got into the role, we had gone through outsourcing of some key functions, rebadging of employees, some voluntary retirements, and it was just in a bad state, right? A lot of not trusting the leadership team, not really having a sense of belonging with the organization, having more work to do that was not given to you. And again, it's not the same as a startup, but the emotions, you kind of range through that. And I mean, we've made a huge effort to try to rebuild trust, and there's so many conversations. And again, you can say it and say, we're not going to do this. We're going to be better. We're going to do things right for you. We care about you. But people have to see that. They have to see it in the actions. They have to see it in the things staying stable, right? And doing the right things to improve that. So as you build your teams, make sure you truly demonstrate care for them, for their families, for their work-life balance, and how they, like their life at work, right? And try to create the trust between them to where they do see that, they truly believe that you have their best interest at heart. And if they see that and they believe that, then their output of work and what they give you is 10x what you could ever imagine, right? And so that'll be the advice that I'd give to folks.
Great, trust is so critical.
Yeah,
Jadee?
I guess as you think about like the startups out there that are just kind of building a new company, they have a great idea. My advice would be the people that you bring on really, really matter, and most of you guys have probably already read the book Good to Great, but there's a section in the book that talks about first who, then what, and really focused on the who and who needs to be part of the company first, and then figure out kind of exactly where you're going, and chasing that big idea is really, really critical. Getting the right people on the bus in the right seats, and then figuring out all the details after that. And so that would be my advice, is just a very solid focus on the who before the what.
I first start by saying, I think it's one thing to look at startups, but it's also, I would just dovetail this with growth. And so I would say, oftentimes we say, well, what size of company? And I think sometimes we should say, what's your growth rate? Because your growth rate really determines a lot of what you need to embrace. And I would say, most startups are seeking high growth. And so in that area, and I think also for any large companies that are seeking high growth, is, I really focus on making sure that you're very fast. How can you make sure that your cycle time from getting from an idea to a product in the market, measure it. Create the discipline around measuring it immediately and defend it, and make sure that you stay close to it. Because at the end of the day, one of the things I say a lot is teams that ship more win more. You have to enunciate the P, but that's absolutely key. And so making sure that you keep your speed is important, whether you're a startup or an established company. Growth needs speed.
Great. Shivani?
I would say, if there's one thing that the pandemic has taught us, is that we can definitely work remote, and we can work remote pretty well, especially if you're talking about a tech startup. For the most part, I think that's going to be a true statement. And I think this has given us, or at least opened our eyes to the opportunity that you don't need to be constrained by the talent or the lack of talent in a specific geographical area. And I'm really excited for, of course, all of the businesses, the company that I work at right now, and all of the startups, future opportunities for everybody, because I'm hoping companies learn that this can definitely help expedite innovation. We're often so constrained, even us at Hunuit, even and my teams, even though we were really hybrid in terms of our setup, we always had the mindset that, but we need to hire at one of these locations. Even though there was a whole bunch of people that were working remote, we still had that. Our first reaction was, and we even put it in our, in job postings, one of the locations was preferred. And I'm hoping that what all of us have learned, and especially if there's a new startup with a great idea, that they use this opportunity to break those, and I'm just going to call it imaginary barriers, because I don't think those are real anymore. And I think the pandemic has taught us that. So that's my silver lining from all of this.
Okay. Well, we don't have a whole lot of time, but I'm going to ask one of the questions from the chat, and whoever wants to answer, go ahead and kick it off. So the question is, it's a couple-parter. Did any of you find that your tech stack actually changed during remote work, both adding tools or removing tools, and which departments had the most change in the stack?
I'll jump in with a quick one. I do know that many of our development teams did not need to find, Shivani mentioned getting on a whiteboard. We had to find ways to do certain collaborative processes different. And so there were a number of small tools that we brought in to do that were augmenting things that we didn't. It wasn't so much a change as much as a gap, like a little gap filler for certain types of capability.
The one area that we've seen a ton of change is just field marketing. So obviously we're not all going to conferences in person. And so for me, supporting the technology that my marketing team uses, we had to transition to what are the platforms that we could use to really host a virtual conference and virtual sessions. That's one area that that really saw a drastic change overnight.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is, and I don't know if it's because of the pandemic and it would have happened or not, but we signed a strategic partnership with Microsoft earlier in the year. And part of it was, obviously we're not a tech company per se, right? Like we're a retail company, we're an ad company. And so, but we still have a lot of technology that needs to be delivered to our customers. So we saw Microsoft as a partner that was going to help us enable that. And so over time now, being remote work, a lot of things are now evolved around teams, right? So it becomes sort of not just a collaboration hub, but it's also a development hub. And hopefully Microsoft, as they move forward with some of their stacks, are kind of collapsing a lot of the development capabilities. So Power BI, Power Apps, the DevSecOps piece they have in Azure, all that is coming together. And we're starting to use more of that Microsoft stack. And I don't know if it's from remote working. One thing that has enabled during remote is people are doing more self-teaching. So we've had access to a lot of online classes, virtual or just, recorded, and they're watching those and learning and then messing around with it in some of these some of these tools. So they're becoming more proficient with it. So that's where some of the tech stack has changed for us.
Great. Thank you. Okay, and then we had, Shivani, did you have anything that you want to add there? Or okay, great. We had one more question. We'll take that real quick. What adaptive practices do you anticipate continuing post-pandemic? We talked about remote work already a little bit, but anything else?
Thing I'll add is communication. I mean, and I mentioned that at the beginning when I said how are people getting connected. And there's what we're doing with our team, but even across the other divisions of our company, even from our CEO, with our CEO now we have twice a week we meet on Tuesdays and Fridays for 45 minutes an executive leadership team to see where things are. And that's not a practice that's going to stop. We did it at the beginning because of the pandemic. We're meeting 3 times a week. And at one point, I remember it was every day, right? But then we went to 3 times a week and now twice a week. But I think twice a week cadence is going to stay. And because I appreciate the visibility and what's happening, forget pandemic or no pandemic. I mean, I think now we're better aligned this way. And I think the teams that are working with us are also appreciating that quite a bit, seeing kind of what's happening with the business, any kind of new things that they need to know. So this increased communication is certainly going to continue post-pandemic.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, I think that wraps it up. Appreciate the time from the panelists. Thank you very much to all of you, and have a good rest of your day.
Much.
Bye.